John 9:3-5. Respondit Iesus, neque hic peccavit, neque parentes eius, sed ut manifestetur opera Dei in illo. Me oportet operari opera eius, qui misit me, donec dies est. Venit nox, quando nemo potest operari, quam Diu in mundo sum, lux sum mundi. Jesus answered, neither this man sinned, nor his parents, but, we have to supply, it happened that the works of God might be displayed in him. It befits or behooves me to work the works of him who sent me, so long as it is day. The night is coming when no one is able to work. So long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. There are a couple of really interesting things to mention in this verse. A lot of it is just sort of boilerplate language that we've seen quite often. These formulas of response have become quite familiar to us if you've been tracking with the Daily Dose for a while. Jesus answered, here we've got a quotation, neither this man sinned, nor his parents, but it happened, we have to supply, in order that the works of God might be displayed in him. Just go through and punctuate here. So he begins by denying the premise based upon which his disciples had asked this question in the previous pair of verses. Neither this guy, the blind man himself, that is the kaikus, sinned, nor did his parents. And then here we've got to supply something like accidit, evenit, etc. It happened, that is, he was born blind. And then we're given the reason in a nice purpose clause. It happened so that, in order that the works of God might be displayed in him. Now, this is maybe the most complicated thing in this passage to explain. It appears that in this version of the text, opera is a neuter plural with a singular verb, manifestetur. Now, this is a third person singular, present passive subjunctive, following ut and a purpose clause, okay? How is it that we can use a singular verb with what appears to be a plural subject? Now, someone might object and say, well, opera, operae, feminine, is an attested noun, just like opus, operis, the neuter noun, of which the plural is opera. So how do we know this isn't just the singular feminine opera, the work or labor of God? Partly for semantic reasons, because the word opera means something slightly different than opus operis, and partly also because we can look at the Greek text and find exactly the same construction. Now, again, we might object and say, well, it's all fine and good in Greek to have a neuter plural subject for a singular verb. That happens all the time in that language, but it doesn't typically happen in Latin, and that's true. But it's a good reminder that what we're dealing with here is a Latin text derived from, translated out of, a Greek one. And that Greek original, as we've seen so many times, exercises enormous influence over the syntax of the Latin, which most of the time is intended to follow the Greek text as closely as possible, even though sometimes that means some slight deformation of typical Latin usage. So by looking at the Greek, we can see this is almost certainly intended to be the plural from opus, operis, the neuter noun, in this unusual construction. But we can also tell from the manuscript history of the Vulgate, this caused some discomfort, because some manuscripts add in an N here to pluralize the verb to match opera so that it's manifestentur. Other manuscripts leave the verb singular, but change opera to be opus, so that it's manifestatur opus in kind of a collective sense, the work made up of many works of God. So we can see from the manuscript tradition in this case, some discomfort was felt about this usage. Now, moving on, in illo is just going to be not so much with demonstrative force as equivalent to in eo, in him, in the blind man. The next sentence here, it befits or behooves me, or it is my duty to work the works, literally. This is what's called a cognate accusative, where the object is semantically related to the verb that is acting upon it, operari opera. This, by the way, is a deponent verb. You'll remember sensus activus sed forma passiva. We do want to note about me that in a different manuscript tradition, this would be nos. And you'll see in your modern English versions, it's not it befits or behooves me, but it befits or behooves us to work the works of him who sent me. For one reason or another, this was transmitted, though, as me. It is my duty, and then just a complementary infinitive here, to do the works, to work the works, and this is for sure neuter plural. If it weren't, it would have to be operam, if we had opera, the feminine noun, in the accusative singular, but it isn't. We've got the accusative neuter plural here. To work the works of him, that is of God the Father, who sent me, so long as, or while it is day. Donac dies est. Here's the reason why. When it knocks, night is coming, and there's a progressive sense here. It's coming on. Night is coming on. We would use the future tense here, maybe in English. Night will come. The night will come when nemo potest operari. Again, remember that this is deponent. When no one, and again in English we would use the future, but here we've got the present, when no one is able to work. That's typical of night, right? In the ancient world, there's only certain kinds of work you can do by candlelight. For the most part, people aren't doing work by lamps and so on. When the sun goes down, time for work is over. So night is coming when no one is able to work. That's typical of night, but also makes sense in this prophetic context. And then finally, so long as quam diu sum in mundo, so long as I am in the world, I am the light of that world. I am the light of the world.